Welcome, my friends, to week 7 of the 100K challenge, the road to $1 million plus. The goal of these videos and everything that I do is to help you match or ideally exceed my success, specifically to this weekly training, the things you need to do each week to get yourself to $100,000 of additional revenue on your way to a 7-figure personal income or beyond. This week, we're going to focus on 4 areas, plus, of course, a bonus. Number 1, it only counts if you count. Number 2, I'll call you when I'm ready to move forward. In other words, there are no objections. We're going to talk about the book we're going to read this week, which is one of the few books that really scared me. It's that good. And shooting yourself in the foot is number 4. And the bonus will be the one resource that I've never missed a single one of in the last 10 years. This information that I'm sharing works. It's not theory. It literally works for me in my practice, which I grew to $2 million with a team of 2 of annual revenue, which generates a 7-figure income for me. It's also what I've done and coached for others advisors, not just these here on the screen, but hundreds and now thousands of advisors. You can find more about me wherever the internet exists. Okay, quick reminder from last week. Week number 6, you can go back and find that video here on YouTube. We are contacting prospects a minimum of every 90 days, right? We can't let prospects just go on for months and months and months and hope that they're going to remember us. Remember, it takes 12 to 18 months for someone to make a decision to hire a financial advisor. And so we want to be contacting them on a regular basis, ideally at least 10 of these people a week. Number 2 action item was do your case prep the week before, the day before, and 15 minutes before each meeting so that you are dialed in for this meeting. Remember to draw things in crayon. Now, maybe you wouldn't literally draw them in crayon for clients, but we need to have that ability, and actually physically drawing them in crayon for yourself, for your own practice, will make a big difference. And the last action item was to have a personal reset strategy. When you have a bad meeting, a bad day, a bad week, a bad whatever, what do you do to reset yourself? Do you go for a walk? Do you snap a rubber band on your wrist, etc.? So let's jump into this week, right? What can we do this week to get ourselves closer to that $100,000 of additional revenue? We're going to focus on 4 key areas: counting your reps, that there are no real objections, the book that scared me, and shooting yourself in the foot versus setting yourself up for success. And our bonus will be a resource that I have not missed a single one on for 10 years. So here's our first focus area. You have to count your reps. For those of you a little bit younger than me, this is Arnold Schwarzenegger back in his younger bodybuilding fame. And he said, there are no shortcuts, just reps, reps, reps. Same is true for growing your practice. You have to do reps, reps, reps. And often we kid ourselves. We think, oh, I did a bunch of reps this week. I called a bunch of people. And then we pull the report from the CRM, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And there's 2 on there. Or I ask you to write down the names of the COIs you actually contacted. And there's 3, where ideally we need at least 10 a week. Now, why the difference between doing 3 throughout the week maybe and literally counting 10? Well, the difference is over the course of a couple of years, you'll do twice as many reps, which you might think, well, twice as many reps, twice as many clients. Wrong. By doing twice as many reps, you will have 5 times as many clients because those additional reps will make you better. Every single rep makes you better. So not only does every single rep get you closer to a yes, every single rep makes you better. And so by doing these reps consistently week after week, you will get consistently better, but you have to count them. So here's our action items. You have to record your reps, whatever it is you're counting. Maybe you're counting center of influence outreach. You're counting Dream 100 interactions. You're counting people that you invited to an event. You're counting clients that you reached out to. Whatever that is, it has to be recorded. You can record it on your desktop calendar. You can record it on a whiteboard, on a Post-it note. I don't care where you put it in the CRM. Record it, and then each week put it into Excel. It's just a simple Excel document. I contacted 15 people this week. I contacted 7. I contacted 47, so that you can see this over time and you can track your progress. Also gives you another accountability of, oh, I was going to do 10 this week. I only did 7. Let me make up this difference. This is also where we'll identify why the growth isn't happening. When you say, hey, listen, I haven't grown in the last 3 months. Cool, let's go back and look at our reps for the last 3 months. Odds are they correspond. Keep in mind sort of the unofficial rule of thumb, which it's going to take 99 no's to get 1 yes. This ratio should come down over time. Ideally, it'd be a much lower ratio, but this is a safe one to assume. And the reason this is important to remember is the no's hurt. They shouldn't hurt. It's objectively, they don't hurt, right? There's not physical harm, but they still hurt. And so by reminding myself, hey, every time I hear a no, I'm one closer to a yes. While that may feel cliche, it still is the truth. And so we want to get those reps in. Let's also keep in mind that every time you hear a no, it makes you better. And the more no's you hear and the faster you hear them, the faster you'll get better, the quicker the pain will go away, and the faster you'll make more money. What to count? Count your COI outreaches, invitations to events, Dream 100 interactions, client communications, content created. Just be consistent and count those every week, especially this week. Focus area number 2, there are no objections. There are no objections. Now, people may say things, specifically prospects, that sound like an objection, like, hey, your fee is too high, or I'm not ready to move forward, or I'm talking to another advisor. Those may sound to the amateur like objections. What they really are is questions. They're questions and they're opportunities, right? And so when someone says, hey, your fee is too high, what they're really saying is, help me understand what I get for what I'm paying. The reason this mindset shift is so important is that if I think it's an objection, I start to take this personally, I start to get defensive, I start to retreat, and it doesn't work. If instead I look at this as a question, as an opportunity, suddenly the whole door opens up to me. So let's give you one that we've run into recently, which is the prospect says, hey, I'll call you when I'm ready, right? Or I'll return your email when I'm ready, or I'll schedule something when I'm ready, or after the summer, or after the fall, or after I retire, whatever the case may be. If this is an objection you're getting, or better stated, a question that you're getting, you need to be ready with your response, right? So your response could be, that's great, I'll look forward to your call, but to make sure that life doesn't get too busy and these things don't get forgotten for another year, why don't we do this? Why don't we go ahead and proceed forward, and we'll start with the things that we had on the one-page financial plan, and when those are done, you can let me know if you'd like to keep proceeding after that. Another one that I've heard very common is, hey, if you're too busy now, what will have to change in your life for you to be less busy, right? Kind of drawing their attention to, hey, you're always going to be busy. Now, if you get this kind of concern or question from prospects, be ready for that. Don't give them the opportunity to say, hey, I'll call you when I'm ready. Come in with, here's what the next step will be. And this kind of goes to our action items. So whatever objections or questions I'm getting most often, I want to have my responses to those. If you're struggling to find a response, put a comment in here. I'll add it to my next video. Ask an advisor that you respect, right? When you get this concern, hey, I think your fees are too high. How do you respond to that? I also want to be proactive. If there's a concern that I'm worried about getting, I want to go ahead and tackle that in advance. So if I'm concerned that they're going to say, hey, listen, I'll call you when I'm ready, then throughout the call before that happens, I want to say, hey, listen, sometimes when I talk to clients, they think, wow, I'm too busy to do this right now. But the ones that hire us realize they don't need to make time for this because we'll take care of it. That's why they're hiring us, right? So I'm seeding that throughout. I always want to make sure in every interaction, I'm ready for the next step so that I'm not just like, hey, what do you want to do next? Well, I'll give you a call. No, the next step is this, right? The next step is to schedule this meeting. The next step is to do the one-page financial plan. The next step is to implement it, etc. Also want to remember that one of our biggest jobs is to coach people towards their goals, right? And I always like to use this example of, we all will give up eating potato chips once we get our six-pack abs. The problem is you'll never get your six-pack abs until you give up potato chips. And so part of our job is to coach people along that way. So when someone says, hey, listen, I'll call you when I'm ready, in a way they're saying like, hey, I want to have a flatter stomach, but I don't want to do the sit-ups, but I need you to encourage me to do the sit-ups. So work on your mindset on how you hear those things. And of course, practice. This is something to also count on your repetitions. Pick a script for the week, an objection, a concern, whatever, and count your repetitions practicing that response. Okay, focus area number 3. I read a lot of books, hundreds, probably well over 1,000 now at this point, usually about 2 a month. And this book, Pre-Suasion by Robert Cialdini, this book scared me. Because the tools in it are so powerful. Robert Cialdini, does a lot of political masterminding. He was largely responsible for President Obama getting elected. This is not a political statement. It just is. It's well documented. This guy is incredibly good at communications because he both understands it from an academic standpoint, but he also took jobs in door-to-door sales and at car dealerships and whatever the case may be, so he could really understand how communications work. This is a must-read or listen to book, whichever your preference is. We're going to do this one over the next 2 weeks, so you do have some time, but you need to get moving on it. It won't read itself. As you're listening to it or reading it, make a Post-it note. I keep Post-it notes on my computer monitor all the time of something you're going to work on. So a lesson that you got from this, be it how you greet people, how you stand in the room, how you use your voice, your body language, the order that you explain things, whatever that is, make a post-it note of one thing that you're going to try and do that in every situation. And then also as you go around in your daily life, watch for examples of persuasion or persuasion that are both good and bad. So things that are persuading you intentionally to do whatever that person wants you to do, or things that people are doing accidentally that are going to lead you away from what it is that you want to do. And then promise me that you'll use the lessons in this book only for good and not for evil. These are incredibly powerful. You really could do a lot of manipulation. By the way, for me personally, the difference between using this to encourage someone versus to manipulate them is the motives in your heart. Now, that might sound a little foo-foo or whatever, but for me, if in my heart of hearts, I believe that a client will be better served by working with our firm, then I'm going to use whatever ethical means I can to persuade them to that end. Just like if I thought somebody could live a better life if they were in shape, I'm going to use whatever methods I can to help them get in shape. Okay. Let's do focus number 4. Use your CRM. Use your CRM. This recently came up in my office, and a shout out to my team for bringing our attention to that. You've got to document everything in your CRM. And it doesn't matter what CRM you use. They all are terrible, and no one is better than the other one, and changing is never worth the tassel. Trust me, I've used a lot of them, unfortunately. But we want to document every single thing that happens in the CRM, and there's 2 reasons for that. One is it's a CYA. Someday, if you're in this industry long enough, you will find yourself in a position where you need to defend the actions that you took with a client. This might be with the client themselves. It might be with their children. It might be with a regulator. It might be with the court system. Whatever the case may be, when, not if, that happens in your career, the more documentation you're going to have, the better off this will be. And let me run through a quick scenario. You haven't been taking good notes in your CRM. And the client passes away, the child complains about it, and they say, well, show us your records. And it shows that you haven't talked to him in the last 2 years. And you say, no, I talked to him all the time. I just didn't put in the CRM. Well, the record says that you didn't talk to him for 2 years. Now you're going to have a problem. So you want to document everything first from a CYA, cover your assets. The second is to help your future self, right? Which is future me is going to have a harder time remembering this conversation unless I record it somehow. And so when I'm putting these notes in, I'm not just putting in, hey, I called and talked to Dave, right? That covers the CYA. But what helps my future self? Hey, I called to talk to Dave and we talked about X, and next time we talk, let's be sure to mention Y. Right now I'm giving myself help, like I'm giving a boost to future me. And so here's kind of this framework, right? What will future me want to know about this conversation? But also, what will my team want to know about this conversation? Especially as your team grows, if a client calls in and talks to you and you don't take good notes, and then they call in and they say, hey, I was just talking to Jarvis about this thing, and your team looks and there's no notes, now you look like you're running the rookie show. Versus if they call in and you're not available and your team says, oh, you know what, I see a note from Matthew here that you talked to you last week, and it looks like you're working on this thing. You know, is that what we're going to talk about, right? Now you look like a pro team. Now, back to our first focus area, which is counting your reps. Every week, you're going to want to physically print your contact report. So the report of all the contacts or all the notes that have been put in your CRM for the week, so that as a team, you can look back through that, see if anything stands out that you need to take action on, but also to keep yourself accountable that you're putting notes in. If you run the report and there's only 2 notes for the week, either we've forgotten to put notes in, which is a problem, or we're not reaching out to clients on a consistent basis, which is an even bigger problem. Okay, so here's our week 7 action items in summary. Count your reps and graph them. Be ready to answer questions because there are no objections. Start reading the book Pre-Suasion and look for examples of this persuasion in your daily life. Put everything in the CRM and run a weekly report so that you can prove to yourself that, in fact, everything is getting put in the CRM. And now for our bonus. For at least the last 10 years, though probably closer to, actually, my friends, I got to be honest, this is pushing 20 years. 15 years, 18 years. For more than 10 years, I have read every single article that is published on the Michael Kitces website, kitces.com. This does not mean I've agreed with every single one or that I found every single one useful, but I've looked at every single one for at least the last 15 years. And at a minimum, I look at the executive summary. So you don't necessarily need to read the whole article. It may not be applicable to you or relevant, or it might be an interview that you're not interested in. at a minimum, look at the executive summary of every single thing that publishes on the Kits' website every single week. This will make you a far more competent advisor. There is so much that you can learn, especially from a technical standpoint. Now, I think it's often lacking how to apply it into real world and how to actually communicate it to clients. So this isn't going to be just a one-stop shop, but your technical knowledge will grow immensely by studying this. It's also the first place I go to anytime I have a technical question. I'll just go to that website and search for whatever it is. Odds are there's an article on that. So check that one out. Make sure to read those every single week. And here's our parting quote, which is one of my favorites. Everybody claims to have won big in Las Vegas, and yet somehow here in Vegas, we still keep the lights on. This is sort of like every fishing story keeps getting bigger every time it was told. You have to count your reps, or you'll start lying to yourself. You'll say, hey, listen, when I went to Vegas, I won. Yes, I called 10 clients last week, or whatever you're trying to count. But the reality is you didn't, and that's why everyone else ends up with the money instead of you. So this, my friends, if you found it helpful, please like and subscribe and forward it to another advisor. And until next week, happy planning.